Hi guys, welcome to the video on multiplying monomials. We've done stuff like this before a little bit. We talked about polynomials at the beginning of the year. This is just going another step further. So first of all, let's just talk about what a monomial is. And while you're listening to the video, go ahead and take notes. If you need to ask them to pause the video, that's fine. Or you can revisit it on Edmodo. Okay, so a monomial. A monomial is a number, a variable, or a product of a number and one or more variables. So those are a lot of words, but basically this is what it looks like. Okay, so you see a 2x. This is a product. Two things being multiplied together, 2 times x. This is a product because it's x times 1. This is also a product because it's 3 times x squared. And then this one's a product of a number and 2 variables. So an example of what is not a monomial is just a whole number. So just 4, 12. It has to be a product in order to be a monomial. Okay, so we're going to do a little bit of review on exponents. So for your first example there, you have x to the third power times x to the second power. Now again, this is going to be a review for you, but go ahead and stick with me. So remember, this means x cubed is x times x times x. There's my 3 x's multiplied by x times x. So I've got my x cubed right here, and I have my x squared right here. So now all I'm going to do is if I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 x's being multiplied by each other, that means it is x to the 5th power. Okay, so when you're multiplying like bases, that means the same base. These have the same base. They're all x. Okay, then all you do is add the exponents. Okay, so an example of that is if you have any number, let me do another color. If you have any number raised to a variable multiplied by another number that's raised to a power, then all you're going to do is take the same base and add the powers together. So m plus n. Okay, let's just do another example real quick. So if you've got a to the third times a to the 7th, you can go ahead and write out 3a's and 7a's if you want, but if you know, all you're going to do is a to the 3 plus 7, you get a to the 10th power. Okay, so you're just going to have to ingrain this in your brain because it's very, very important. All right, the second thing is multiplying a power, or a power being raised to a power. So this one is saying you are going to take the quantity x cubed and we are going to raise it to the 2nd power. So remember, an exponent means that you're going to take the base, this is our base, x cubed, and we're going to multiply it by itself 2 times. So this becomes x cubed, there's my first one, times x cubed, right? Because this means 1x cubed, 2x cubes, right? So if I have, now we did the product rule, and now we're going to go back to the multiplying like bases. So now if you have x to the third times x to the third, our rule says that we're going to add those together. So we get x to the 9th. I'm sorry, not x to the 9th, x to the 6th. Now if you look, 6 is also equal to 3 times 2. All right? So when a power is raised to a power, you're going to multiply the exponents. So that just basically means that any number raised to a power and that quantity raised to a different power is equal to that same base and then those 2 exponents multiplied together. Okay? Now you can always write it out the way I did here and go back to the adding. This is just a shortcut, makes things go a little bit quicker. All right, so here's something that we haven't really talked about a lot, or maybe at all, is if you have a number or variables inside the parentheses and then the exponent on the outside. So here's our variables, and it is saying to cube that. All right, whenever you have an exponent outside of the parentheses, that means you're going to take that exponent, which is 3, and you're going to distribute it to everything inside the parentheses. So it's kind of like the distributive property, except for we're not multiplying, we're just adding the exponent. So what that means is this is equal to x to the third power and y to the third power. You square everything in there, or sorry, you cube everything in there. So I cubed x and I cubed y. Okay, it's as simple as that. So let's do one example. Let's say we've got 2x to the third power. Okay, remember we're going to take this number, this variable, and we're going to distribute it to the 2 and to the x. We're going to multiply. So this is 2 to the third power and x to the third power. All right? So a power of a product, you're going to distribute the exponent with multiplication. Just remember that the power applies to everything inside the parentheses. Okay, so we're going to go through and do some examples. I'm going to go through all the steps. If you want to work ahead while the video's on and check your answers as they come up, that's fine. And then your homework sheet is on the back. 8 questions. There's space on the bottom for you to show your work. All right. Okay, one thing I want to just talk about real quick before we start the practice problems is what we're going to be using a lot in this is called the commutative property. We've talked about that, and that basically means that 3 times 2 is the same thing as 2 times 3. You can do them in any order, just like A times B times C is the same thing as C times B times A. Hey, when you're multiplying things together, you can switch them around however you want, so just keep that in mind. Okay, now the first couple of these aren't real hard, but we are still going to show all our steps, because if you look down towards the bottom, like 13 and 12, they get kind of hairy, so you need to make sure that you're practicing when it's easy, so that way you can do it when it's hard. Okay, so on this first one, first let's look at it. We're doing 2 things. We're raising a power to a power, and we're also, so we have x squared times y to the third power, and that's all raised to the second power. So remember, if you're raising a power to a power, that means that you are going to take that exponent and you're going to apply it to everything. Okay, remember when you're multiplying or raising a power to power, you multiply. So x squared squared is x to the 4th power, and y cubed squared is y to the 6th power. So I did 2 times 2 to get the 4, and I did 3 times 2 to get the 6. Okay, so this one wasn't too hard. All right, number 5. All right, so here we go. We are multiplying. Remember what I said. You can take these numbers and you can rearrange them. So let's just do that. So we've got m to the 3rd times m, right? Because I'm just taking this number and that number, putting them together, times n squared. So I'm taking this number and this number. So now when I multiply 2 exponents together, remember these have 1s here raised to the 1st power. So m to the 3rd power times m to the 1st power is m to the 4th power, and n to the 1st power times n to the 2nd power is n to the 3rd power. Okay, so those first 2 weren't too bad. All right, now this one looks scarier than it is. So basically, it's just got 3 steps. So what I would do is I would do 1 step at a time. So the first step we're going to do is this, because you always want to do what's inside the parentheses first. Okay, so 2 cubed raised to the 2nd power is the same thing as 2 to the 6th power. Okay, so now this is inside the parentheses, and we are going to square that. So 2/6 raised to the 2nd power is 2 to the 12th. Okay, so when you figure out what 2 to the 12th is, it is actually 4,096. Okay, So that one wasn't really hard. It's just a matter of knowing what to do first. When you see something that is kind of confusing, just know that you can break it apart and do one part at a time. All right. Number 7. Okay, same thing. So remember, we are taking things inside the parentheses and we are raising it to the 4th power. So that means we're going to do a to the 3rd to the 4th power and x squared to the 4th power. Okay? So I just took it from one step and went to the second step. Now I know if I raise a power to a power like this, I get a to the 12th times x to the 8th. And that's my final answer. Right? You're just taking one step at a time. Please do not try to do these in your head when we're first starting, because when we start getting with lots of variables and fractions, you're going to lose something. All right. Okay, number 8. Now this one looks kind of crazy, but remember what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and put the numbers that are the same, like terms, together. All right, so we've got 3 and 2. So we know 3 times 2, and then we're going to do x squared and x squared, so that's times x squared times x squared. Then let's do y squared and y squared. All right, and then we are left with z and z, so that's z times z. All right, so now we can just go through and simplify. So 3 times 2 is 6. X squared times x squared is x to the 4th. Y squared times y squared is y to the 4th. And z times z is z squared. Okay, so just think about it. If I gave you all those values for your variables, it's much nicer to plug it in to this one rather than plugging it into the question that you got to begin with. Okay, now, same thing. We're going to go ahead and let's just group things together. So community of properties says that we can put things in any order. So we've got A and A. So we're going to do A times A, then B and B, so B times B, and our last one is C times C. Right, A times A is obviously A squared, B times B, B squared, and C times C, C squared. Okay, it's all about just knowing how to manipulate numbers, okay? All right, number 10. This one's a little different because it has a fraction. Okay, so first let's talk about, remember, if you're squaring it, the way it's showing right there, if you're squaring something that is inside the parentheses, you're going to square every single part of that multiplication. So this changes to 2 to the 5th squared and d squared. Okay, now something else to think about is that if you square a fraction, that means that you square both terms. So this becomes 2 squared, excuse me, I'm going to write like this. This becomes 2 squared over 5 squared, okay? And we still have d squared. Okay, so this has to go to both numbers, okay? So 2 squared is 4, 5 squared is 25, and that's just multiplied by d squared. Okay, don't let the fraction freak you out. All right, number 11. All right, same thing. So remember, we have this power that's outside the parentheses. Remember, you have to raise everything inside the parentheses to that power. All right, so that means we have got 0.3 squared, and then we've got times x to the 3rd squared times y to the 2nd squared. Okay, you're squaring every single term, squaring 0.3, squaring x cubed, and squaring x squared, or y squared, sorry. So 0.3 squared comes out to 0.09. X cubed squared is x to the 6th power, because remember, we're going to multiply those exponents. And y squared raised to the 2nd power is y to the 4th power. All right, here we come to one that looks a little hairy because of the fractions. All right, so again, that squared on the outside tells you to square everything inside the parentheses. So that's 3 to the 10th power, the whole thing squared, and y squared squared. All right, now we're going to do the other term, and we're going to apply that to the third power. So that is 10 to the third power, right, times y squared to the third power. Okay, if you try to do this in your head, you're going to miss something. So please make sure you're writing out your steps. I promise it will help. All right, so remember 3/10 squared is the same thing as 3 squared over 10 squared. You have to square both of them. So that gives us 9 over 100 times y squared to the second power is y to the fourth. Then we've got 10 excuse me, to the third power, which is 1000. And then y squared raised to the third power is y to the excuse me, sixth. Okay, let me go ahead and